Time now is 7:14. More than 25,000 people have signed a petition demanding answers on the 1994 Chinook disaster, which led to the deaths of 29 people. 25 senior intelligence experts of 4 Special Forces crew were killed when the RAF helicopter came down on the Moluccan Tyre.
The families of the dead are calling for the release of papers connected to the crash. The Ministry of Defence says the release of the information would breach personal data protection rights. Our reporter, Stuart Winchap, has more.
Esme was 7, the oldest of 3 children, when her father, Major Gary Sparks, was killed in the Chinook crash.
Never having a father figure growing up is incredibly difficult, and dealing with that grief, but when you also have unanswered questions surrounding their death, that makes it even more challenging.
29 people died. They were leading security personnel from the Royal Ulster Constabulary, MI5 and the Army. But the exact cause of the crash is still not known. The families campaigned for a judge-led public inquiry, but that's now been rejected.
Obviously, it was hugely disappointing, and it's angered all of us that the Ministry of Defence can be so dismissive of people who ultimately gave their lives every day and ultimately gave their lives for their service to the country, that we have been rejected.
The families of those killed say it's wrong. Official documents about the crash were sealed and will not be released till 2094, 100 years after the crash. They also say they now know there were safety concerns about the aircraft.
We are all extremely confident that the aircraft was not airworthy. It was grounded by the RAF engineers who weren't allowed to fly it, and deemed positively dangerous and not to be trusted.
The 2 pilots, Jonathan Tappert and Richard Cook, were initially blamed for flying too low and too fast. But after a long legal campaign by their families, they were exonerated. In a statement, the Ministry of Defence says the Mull of Kintyre crash was a tragic accident, and our thoughts and sympathies remain with the families. It says, we understand the uncertainty over the cause of the crash has added to the distress of the families. But it does not believe a public inquiry will produce any new evidence, and says there has already been 6 investigations and inquiries. The Ministry of Defence says the Chinook helicopter has been a mainstay of operations in successive theatres of war. But the families of those killed want the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, to overrule the MOD's decision to reject a public inquiry. After 31 years, the families say they want truth and transparency over how their loved ones died. Stuart Winchap, BBC News.
So with us here on the sofa this morning, Andy Tobias, who was 8 years old when he lost his father, Lieutenant Colonel John Tobias, in the crash. Morning to you.
Morning.
This is deeply personal for you, deeply personal. I mean, does it have an effect on you all this time later that you are still campaigning and trying to get this information? Presumably it's a technical thing, but it also must be an emotional journey for you.
Huge emotional journey on myself, my family and everybody involved, all the families. All we want is the truth, and that's been denied to us, and it's been denied to us for 31 years. The Ministry of Defence have misled not only the families, but multiple MPs throughout this journey.
We're going to show a picture of your dad now, and I know you're OK with that. And can you just tell us a little bit about him and how it was he was on that flight? Yeah,
he was a great man. He was very active, loved all his sports, passed that down to both his sons. He was just been posted out to Northern Ireland to take on a new role at the time. So we were just in the process of moving from North London to Northern Ireland. And he loved his job. He was very proud to work for the Ministry of Defence, and he would be so upset to see that his family and all the other families are campaigning so hard to just get the truth at the moment.
What was the impact of the narrative around the crash on you and your family? You were very young, but you'd have felt the effects, obviously, from the animals, but on you and your family?
I mean, I was 8 years old at the time, so when you suffer grief, you only are able to process it at certain points in time. Mine was a lot later in life. But when you start to have a family of your own and children, you know, I want to do my kids proud and stand up for them and make sure that we're seeking the truth. And, You know, we know for a fact that the Ministry of Defence are lying to us and they're deceiving us. And they've done this not only for our campaign, but for multiple other campaigns out there as well. So, you know, we are pushing hard for duty of candour, a legal duty of candour for the Prime Minister to implement something on those lines. So, you know, there's not other families that are having to suffer this again.
I must say, we obviously asked the Ministry of Defence for a statement, and it said, the Mull-of-Kintyre crash was a tragic accident. Our thoughts and sympathies remain with the families, friends and colleagues of all those who died. The accident has already been the subject of 6 inquiries and investigations, including an independent judge-led review. The closed records held at the National Archives contain personal information relating to third-party individuals. The early release of this information would breach those individuals' data protection rights. Let's break that down just a few, so we can explain. The Ministry of Defence obviously will offer its sincere sympathies. The accident has already been the subject of 6 inquiries and investigations. What was insufficient about those?
Those investigations were all about, was it pilot error? Were they negligent? Now, firstly, none of the families felt that it was pilot error, and we were so delighted when they were exonerated in 2011. But the evidence was all about what was the cause of the crash. Now, we are not looking for the cause of the crash. We're looking for the circumstances around why those men and women boarded an aircraft that was not airworthy. And the RAF and the Ministry of Defence knew it was not airworthy prior to that crash taking place and after. So if they knew it was after, not fit for flight, why smear the pilots' names for 16 years?
The closed records contain personal information relating to third-party individuals. The early release, and I'm interested in the word early release of this information because that implies that there might be a release, would breach those data protection rights. Fair enough?
Mm-hmm. But data protection, if it's regarding PII information, this can be redacted. You know, I'm not looking to look at the documents myself. Somebody in a legal capacity can do that and review that and see where it takes us. But we've asked the Prime Minister to jump in and actually give us a public inquiry, because currently we're going to have to go down the legal route. We've asked him, he responded yesterday, he's rejected that request. He's basically, on one hand in the letter, stated that the government are committed to transparency and accountability, but on the other hand, slammed the door straight in our face and said this is not something that we can get. And personally, I found it quite pathetic, the response, and it shows a complete lack of moral leadership from our Prime Minister, and we've completely lost faith in our government and our Prime Minister because of it.
Andy, you mentioned the fact that you're a father yourself now.
Correct.
There is a 100-year seal on this information. You're not going to let this go, presumably. You're the son of a man who died. You're pursuing it. Will those who are on side with you on this, will the quest just continue, regardless?
Absolutely. All the families are united. We are determined to get the truth. We've got 24 out of the 29 families involved, and we will continue to fight until we get access to those documents.
Sometimes, I don't mean to say what you wish, you're a father yourself, and you mentioned that point at which maybe you started to ask questions yourself. That personally is very difficult when your own children want to ask those questions, and I don't know how old they are, about what happened to their grandfather. Yeah. That puts things into a real focus, doesn't it? Because they will, just as you did. Absolutely, and like I said, I want to set a good example to my children, that you stand up for people, stand up to people who are bullying you, essentially, and not giving you the truth and transparency that we deserve. And, you know, like I said, all the families are committed to keep fighting, and we will continue to do so until the end. We appreciate you coming and talking to us today. Thank you very much. That's Andy Tobias, who's Chinook Justice, part of the Chinook Justice campaign. Thank you.